Hey guys, how's it going? I just want to share with you the this is a bit old schoolish kind of deck. Those were back in the days because when I started playing Magic the Gathering, that was what 1994, I think. And this was one of those decks I always wanted. I think this was also part of those championship decks, those gold bordered ones. But this is my own version of the old school blue green madness deck. The concept of madness is more card advantage, wherein you usually like instead of cycling, because cycling was when onslaught block came in, or sorry, when Urza's block came in and then went back with onslaught. But madness, this is more like you take advantage of drawing cards and then discarding it, and then make crazy things. So let's start with the basic standard 60 card deck we have. We the only non-basic land I used back then because tropical islands too expensive, so we'll just go with Yavi Maya Coast. I have four copies of one, two, three, four Yavi Maya Coast, so at least you have a splash of green and blue. Even though there's that one damage, that's very helpful because there are times you may need green or blue, or at least the colorless doesn't hurt. And then we have, I think, nine forests. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine forests. And then nine islands, I believe. Four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. So that's 22 lands altogether. It's not much mana heavy per se because uh, green, as we all know, is one of those easy mana fix. And then four copies of Basking Root Walla. The good thing with the Basking Root Walla is that the madness cost, if you notice, is zero. So as long as you discard it, it's free. You get a 1/1 lizard that can be pumped to 3/3. And then we also have four copies of, this is the main engine here, the Wild Mongrel. Two to cast, discard a card. So let's say, for example, on your second turn, you have the Wild Mongrel, discard the Basking Root Walla. You already have what potential 5 damage at least on the next turn if they become unblockable. And the good thing here is that the Mongrel can change the color. Aside from just this, the +1/+1, it so at least any protection from green, he's safe. He can be blue, black, whichever color you want. And aside from the +1/+1 ability. And then we also have four copies of the Arrogant Worm. This is one of those heavies that only cost you three mana for a 4/4 trample. Especially with the Wild Mongrel, and as I said, Mongrel is your main guy here. So on turn 3, you have a potential 4/4 that has trample. I mean, worst case scenario, you have a 5 to cast 4/4 trample. So there's no loss there. And the art's way cool because it's John Avon. So you have four copies of that. Those are your main guys there. This, I just used base it on Inquest before. If you guys don't know, Inquest, that was like the Beckett of Magic, or mainly Magic, but it's more like gaming stuff. Because back then it wasn't really that much. Magic was the biggest one, so Inquest was your guide. Because online wasn't really that much as it is now. So Call of the Herd. This is one of those cards wherein you can cast, and this is also the good thing with Madness because it has flashback. So regardless if it was discarded or not, it gives you the advantage to I mean discarded in a way that it was discarded with the Wild Mongrel. This gives you the advantage of replaying the card, and then only for 4 mana. So that doesn't really hurt. I mean, who wouldn't want to have like 3/3 elephant and then flashback again for another 3/3 elephant? So you have four copies of this as well. This was honestly back in the days a bit more expensive. Like I think it went to 18-20 bucks back then, 94, 95. But now it's like what, not even 50 cents, I think, for each of these. And then you also have 4 copies of Roar of the Worm. Normally you wouldn't cast Roar of the Worm because it's 7 to cast, to put a 6/6 green worm token. So what I would suggest, like, so discard this with the Wild Mongrel, and then so you get a +1/+1, and then use this flashback ability. That's the best use of the Roar of the Worm. Again, worst case scenario, you have to cast it for 7. But I mean, this is like late game. But at least in on your second turn, discard it. Potentially in your fourth turn, you have a 6/6 worm token. Overrun. This is your cheese, because this is green and blue, so there's obviously no cheese, unlike red. So this makes your mongrels, makes your root wallace, makes your roar of the worm tokens +3/+3 and trample. The key here is trample, especially like in mid game, because madness is more tempo. So like mid game, you just need to do the right timing. So and then there's a bit control, but not really heavy control, especially if you're running blue. Normally it controls the key, but in this case, it's more creature based. So Ray of Revelation, the only white card here, just because you can discard it, and take note of the flashback cost because it's green. So destroy target enchantment. You don't really need to use that white because you'll never be able to use it for the original casting cost. And then you have 2 copies of Merfolk Looters, because these are, I before I originally used Careful Study, but Careful Study is a one-time use. At least this, you have a 1/1 body, and it lets you draw a card and then discard, because discarding is really the main key why you're having the looter. I mean, discarding the 1/1 body is just the bonus, but at least you have a permanent that you can tap and then use and abuse. Then you have, this is your control here, Circular Logic, because you most likely would have lots of cards in your graveyard. So because this one counters target spell, and its controller pays 1 color less for each card in your graveyard. And the madness cost is the best here. It's just like a counter spell for 1 blue, and then your opponent most likely will pay what, at the middle part of the game, maybe potentially 5 color less, which is tough for a one blue counter. And then let's skip Wonder first. So let's use this first, because this is the other counter spell you have, Mana Leak. I chose Mana Leak over Counterspell because of the because this is not a pure blue deck, and because Madness runs a bit faster. So most likely you just would need at least 1 blue and 1 color less. You're not using like 2 pure blue colors. And then this is also one of the key guys here, Wonder, because Wonder would make your creatures fly, therefore may potentially become unblockable as long as you have this in your graveyard, which is easy to do, either via Wild Mongrel, via Careful Study, via Merfolk Looter, and then you have an island in play. Creatures you control have flying, so most likely they would be unblockable. And then for some reason I just put 1 Careful Study here before I used 4, but this is just your insurance. So at least if you don't have like any Merfolk Looters yet, this would at least hasten the situation on the game. Deep Analysis. This was like, just because you can draw 2 cards for 4 mana, and then you can pay the flashback and pay 3 life, so you may be able to draw 4 cards. I mean, 3 life wouldn't hurt if that would lead you to winning the game closer. So, by the way, like this graveyard or tombstone icon here, that means it has flashback. Because right now, I'm not really sure with the modern cards if they still use that. Flashback came back, I think, with those time spiral expansion. I'm really not 100% sure though, because I'm more old school. So Moment's Peace, same as here. So this has the Tombstone, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. This would at least save you, like, it's like almost taking 1 extra turn. This is, by the way, my sideboard. And then two colorless, one green, two flashback. Cross and reclamation. This is for you to just at least do a quick regrowth because this is instant. You would want to use like some of those cards that you may potentially want to go back to the library. And then Waterfront Bouncer, similar to Merfolk Looter. The only thing is that this just would discard a card from your hand, which is to your advantage, and then return like unsummon the creature, either your opponents or yourself. If, for example, someone cast a Wrath of God, for example, so at least this saves you maybe earlier, later in the game. So an extra Merfolk Looter wouldn't hurt. Aquamoeba. Again, this is not really a card advantage, but an advantage to yourself because you're discarding a card here. Wherein it makes it, instead of it 1-3, makes it 3-1. You have 4 copies of this in your in your sideboard. And then Quiet Speculation. This is your demonic tutor here. So search for library for up to 3 cards with flashback because you have Moment's Peace, you have Deep Analysis, you have Roar of the Worm at least on the second turn. If it's in your graveyard, the better, the faster the better is the key to the game here. So you have 3 copies of this on your sideboard. I usually would like to keep one of this in the main board, at least one. And then Upheaval. This was no, only in Commander it's banned just because it's too strong. Upheaval returns all permanents to their owner's hands. So this would really honestly, like, this is your reset button there. Just in case, like, worst case scenario that you're already like what you're hoarded with creatures from your opponents. So this would at least save you. And the good thing with this is that, for example, you have the Basking Root Walla in your that returns to let's say when you cast Upheaval, there's like, for example, like 12 cards in your hand. Discard the Basking Root Walls because you need to keep 7, or any other cards that you may discard that you can use to your advantage. So this is key here too. This is your, because you don't have access to Wrath of God, you don't have access to Apocalypse or Pernicious Deed. And then these are just the elephant tokens that they have to make it a bit fancier. So yeah, that's it. These were decks back in the day, simpler, strong back then. I'm pretty sure this can still be one of those potential decks that can win. In the old school format, no, because this is not that old school. But this was the time where revised. I mean, where fourth ed came. I mean, this because this is like the Odyssey block, where those came after. So yeah, it's fun. If you want to try to build this deck, it's not that expensive anymore. I may have spent what potentially $30, maybe between 30 to $50, but that's not bad for a, like, if, for example, you wanted to start playing Magic and make it a bit old school, but not spending that much as opposed to the original old school. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time, guys. Have a good day. Take care.